Then the second thing is that we need to include the collection of objects. So how do we do that? We do that in using the square brackets. So the square bracket tells the compiler that we are going to declare, or we are declaring a collection of objects with the name called shopping list. So the compiler is going to go back to your RAM. Before, when the compiler went to the RAM, it said, I need one single space. When we define this class, when we define this variable, we told the compiler that we need a single space inside the RAM. But when we actually declared the array, we are telling the compiler to go back to the memory or go back to the RAM, and we are telling the compiler to ask the RAM to give us a collection of space, not single space, but a collection or multiple spaces, so that we can store our data sequentially or in an order. So inside this shopping list, suppose you want to buy oil, we can say that we want to buy oil. Then we want to buy something like salt. We can actually say this, grocery shopping, right? Then we can say that we want to buy spices. Putting spices in an egg is like a worse decision maybe, but who cares? So then you have got the second stuff is the eggs. So there are three stuff that's there are three objects. There are three elements. There are four objects, or you could say there are four elements. So inside this list, we have got certain stuff. Maybe you're planning to buy, or maybe you're planning to go to the grocery store, and you are planning to buy something for a special occasion. You want to buy a cake. So before you go there, you make a list. So the list, when we make a list inside the programming language, just like in suppose in Ruby, we use the collection either array or an hash. If our list is a sequential order, suppose we want to buy everything in a sequence order. Suppose we want to buy the oil first, then we want to buy the salt next after we have bought the um, oil, then we want to buy the spices, then we want to buy the eggs and everything else. So if we want to maintain the order, if we want to maintain the sequence, then we have to use arrays. But if we don't want to maintain the sequence, perhaps we don't actually do that in many cases, then we can use a hash. But we're going to look into what a hash is after a while. So in here, we have got a sequential list. This is a list, and each of the items inside the list or inside this array is called an element, or we can also call it as an object, because in Ruby everything is represented, almost everything is represented as an object. So this array element, which is the oil, is placed in the first place. So if we want to access, or if we want to display this oil, or if we want to suppose you create a program, and inside that program it will take several items. Just like you want to create a program that takes all the input as shopping items, and it will show all the necessary shopping items which are requested by the user. So if our user has requested to see which item comes first in the array, if he wants to see which item is the first element in the array, then all we need to do is put, as we know, the puts element is going to display the data on the console. Then we're going to call the array by its name, shopping list. And the next thing that we need to do is, when we want to access each element inside the array, we have to again use the square bracket. But because, as I've already told you, that each of the array elements are indexed, which means this is a sequence, this is in a sequential order. When we talk about a sequential order, it means the compiler will actually assign certain indexes or certain integer numbers or whole numbers to each of these items or each of these elements. So that means the first element will have an index of 0 because all arrows will start at the position of 0. The second element will have an index of 1. The third element will have an index of 2. The fourth element will have an index of 3. So you have a sequential order 0, 1, 2, 3. So if the user wants to see, or you create a program and your user wants to see what is the first item in the list, or what's the first item, or what's the first element in the array, then all you have to do is put the 0, the index of 0, because this is the first element and the first element is indexed with the integer number of 0. So you have to put the 0 in here, and let's see what happens. So let's run the program, and now we see that OL is being displayed. So this means that the index of 0 is actually accessing the first array element, and it's being displayed, or it's being replaced when your compiler actually encounters this line of code, which is the fifth line. And when it reads that, puts grocery shopping list and first element, it means, or it will understand that there is an array called grocery shopping list, and hence we're trying to access the first element by saying sorry sorry for that. So what we want to do in here is that we're telling the compiler that we have got an array. And how does the compiler understand that? The compiler will understand that this named grocery shopping list is an array by looking at the subscript operator, which means both of these square brackets actually represent, or actually tells the compiler that this name is actually referring to an array.